to this call of the CTSA consortium. It's rare that I have called last-minute calls like this, particularly for a Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. But we really wanted to get this information into your hands as quickly as possible because we've had some really important developments, which makes some efforts all of us have been working on for the last several years and accelerated in the context of the COVID epidemic or pandemic. That allows those efforts to really come to fruition in a major way, and time is of the essence in this COVID epidemic, and so we really need you to begin taking part in this. And so I want to welcome all of you to this call. So let's jump right in. Click if you could go to the next one. So this is a very brief call. Obviously, it's 30 minutes. We are really appreciative. I'm personally very appreciative of you all rearranging your schedules to be here. And this is the beginning. This is the beginning of a really grand adventure, I think, for all of us. Granted, enabled by a lot of work by a lot of people over many years, but this is the beginning, and you will be getting a lot of updates, frequent updates as we go forward. Because I was eager to get this information to you rapidly, really as soon as we had it. Not all the T's have been crossed and the I's have been dotted. So you're seeing a bit of a work in progress, but I think that befits the nature of the pandemic that we're in. Okay, so I want to give you a status update on our efforts to create a centralized clinical COVID-19 database. Acknowledge, as I just have, and I will continue to do, the collaboration and spirit of all of you that has gotten us to this point. And then the ask is for the hubs to consider taking the first step in participating by signing a data transfer agreement, which we'll get to at the end, and then provide just some insights into what the next steps will be. So next one. So you're all very well aware of COVID-19. You're probably living it 24/7 as I have. I often tell people that I have not been this busy for such an extended period of time since I was a resident, and I was a lot younger then. But I think we're all in this situation, and we're all into it together. But this is a time of national need, and I've really been gratified by all of the communications that I have gotten from so many of you asking how we could marshal the resources and intellect and expertise of the CTSA program to make a big difference. And all of you are contributing at your local and regional and truly national level, but this is something that we're able to do across the network that I'm really excited about. So you know that we have an ongoing pandemic, no approved treatments, number of potential treatments are being tried on patients without adequate data. And there are a lot of new treatment developments underway and at the same time. So the problem is that there's, as we've all experienced, there is no standardized way to collect or access the kind of clinical data needed to understand how best to either take care of our patients or direct our efforts to developing new treatments. There's a huge amount of clinical activity going on underway, of course, because it's a pandemic and people come to the hospital and get treated. Whether we have the data that we would like to know how to treat them or not. And so we desperately need a systematic coordination, coordination and harmonization. And I'm well aware of all the institutions that the fact that all of your institutions and you personally are under a lot of stress to address these needs. So next one. So what is this thing that you probably heard a little bit about, the NCATS National COVID Cohort Collaborative, sometimes called N3C? It's a shared vision that we've all had for the rapid collection of clinical lab and diagnostic data from hospitals, healthcare plans, and it's built on a lot of work that a lot of you have done over the last few years. but to do this at the peak of the pandemic and hopefully to participate in the evolution and downward nature of that pandemic, as well as to understand COVID-19, who COVID-19 affects, who it affects badly and less badly, how it seems to choose how to manifest in different ways in different patients. It's really quite mystifying in many cases, and to identify effective interventions. I don't need to, again, tell you that speed is critical. I think all of us experience this every day. We need to make access to data fast and easy, and we need, ideally, to evolve this platform to support clinical trials. So next one. So we wait for the next slide. So how is this being done? The idea, of course, is to turn data into knowledge. Knowledge that all of you who are on the right side there, researchers from CTSA hubs, but also other institutions, of course, need these data to take care of our patients and guide our research. But where these data come from, in this case, is from all of you, from the CTSA hubs and other organizations that will be able to put, other healthcare organizations that will be able to put their data into this format as well. The work that's been done over the last few years to develop not only the infrastructure, but a really unique ability to take healthcare EHR records from any of these formats, ACT, Trinetic, PCORI, OMOP, really any format, put them into a common data model, and then to have that live in the NCATS cloud, where we have stewardship of these data, and to make those data available to qualified researchers. So next one. So how does this help answer questions that all of us have about the novel coronavirus, and how is it different from what's already out there? I think we're all aware of federated models, which are really excellent in their own right. Models like PCORI is probably one of the most famous, one of the most well-known, but Sentinel, other ones that allow us as researchers to ask specific questions, and so it's a formulate a specific question, go out individually to all these data partners. They come up with the answer and they send the answer back, and those are very useful for answering yes or no questions, like is drug X beneficial in COVID-19, or does disease Y impair the course or affect the course of some comorbidity, affect the course of COVID-19. You can get a lot of very useful information that way, but it's limited in the kinds of questions that one can be asked, that one can ask, and it's quite intensive for the informatics staff at the institutions, because they have to configure the answer every time depending on the question. So what we're creating here is a centralized model that allows investigation of broad iterative questions of the kinds that we as researchers and physicians ask, which is well, gosh, there's lots of potential drugs out there. What are all the potential drugs that might help COVID-19 patients, and which ones make people worse? What of all the diagnoses that are out there, which ones affect impact outcome or manifestations of the disease, and which ones don't? These are much more open-ended questions that require going back. Well, okay, I have this answer now. Give me this question and this question and this question. So they're both very, very valuable, but this is different from what has existed before. And has required all of this work that we've done together. Okay, next. So who is all of this? It's really all of you. It's the National Center for Data Health, the CD2H program that you've all, I think, worked with. Informatics teams at all of your hubs and other informatics teams that we support via other programs. The NCATS internal team of IT specialists, informatics people, cloud people, data security people, who've all worked together to make this cloud possible and make the platform possible. Lots of collaborators and data partners. But now what we need to add is what this is all about, getting data on real live COVID-19 patients in as close to real time as we can from all of you. And that's why we're on the phone today. So next one. So why are we doing this now? And why did I get you on the phone on a Friday afternoon when hopefully you'd be moved on? As a friend of mine says, that when 5 o'clock hits, he likes to move on from coffee to scotch. So we'd all like to be doing that. So why did I drag you onto a phone call at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon? This is just now the last pieces have fallen into place, just in the last few days. So NCATS over the last many years has developed and demonstrated this secure world-class cloud-based enclave, and we are now ready to scale it. We've finally worked out data management issues with the Office of the General Counsel. These are the government lawyers, the policy folks from the Office of Science Policy about the privacy rule and HIPAA and all kinds of other things, questions that many of you may have, and we're glad to answer. CD2H has honed its ability to do the data harmonization that I mentioned, derived from EHRs for maximum interoperability. And of course, you all, the CTSA hubs, have a combined 250 million or so patients, the majority of the US population. It's an absolutely unique national treasure to bring to bear to understand the immediate health impacts as well as the longer-term sequelae of COVID-19. So this is a program that's been developed by all of us, by all of you, working together for the entire research and care community. It really addresses what I think all of us have felt. Well, gosh, you know, we really need to make a big contribution to the country's needs in this really unprecedented in our lifetimes pandemic. So next one. Okay, so what are the first steps now for your hub to take part, if you wish, and I hope as many of you as possible will take part. We have worked very hard with all of you and the Office of the General Counsel, and as I said, many other folks, to establish a data transfer agreement, a DTA, that provides the terms and conditions for data transfer and outlines the general terms of data use. And that's available from us. We haven't sent it to everybody yet, but that's the purpose of this call. And every situation is a little bit different, so we'll give you the contact for that in the last slide. If you can see your way clear to sign the DTA, which we hope you will, then you would work with NCATS at that point and the informatics folks to transfer what is called a limited data set that is relevant to COVID-19 in whatever your institution's preferred common data model is, derived from EHRs, to this centralized, secure, cloud-based enclave. And it would be done on a recurring basis, but once it's set up, it happens automatically. There's very little work for your informatics people once it's set up once. So several hubs have already signed the DTA in the last few days, and we can refer you to them. Just among them are UNC and MUSC, but there are several others just today. The data use agreement, which many of you may know, is a different kind of document. Often they're done together, but we did them differently. We separated them for a variety of reasons in this case. So the data use agreement is being drafted now. We expect that it'll be done within 2 weeks. And during that time, if we can get all the data in, then there's a lot of data harmonization and crunching that needs to go on to get these data ready for folks to use. So by the time the data use agreement is ready to be signed, the data will be ready to be used. And for questions on this, particularly on the use, Hopkins is the central IRB and Dan Ford's on the phone with questions. So, okay, next one. Okay, so this is give you a little bit of a view of what's coming. So I just mentioned the DTA. Please let us know if you would like us to provide you with the DTA for your consideration. Contact the Office of Strategic Alliances. This is Lily Portilla in her shop, and most of you know that's the email there, and I'll give it to you again on the last slide. And again, you will have all these slides afterwards, so don't feel like you need to scribble this down. And of course, we suggest looping in your legal point of contact and or your sponsored research office. And the intent here is to start immediately and show proof of principle for answering important COVID-19 research and care questions by June 1st. I think all of us would like to have these data by May 9th, which is tomorrow. Believe me, I have asked my staff why we can't have it the day after. But of course, nothing is possible immediately, but we are all impatient. And so really that's our goal here. So where we are now is the first of those boxes over there on the left. That's for the hubs and us to sign the DTA. And then there is a secure data transfer that requires the informatics teams at your place and ours. The CDM means Common Data Model. It's an CDM agnostic process. And the CTSA hub sends an LDS, a limited data set, to this cloud environment. And then CD2H leads after the ingestion, so-called, leads the curation, harmonization into this OMOP model. In case you're wondering why we decided to use OMOP, it's just the most widely used right now, and so it's one that everybody, all the institutions inside the CTSAs and ALP are familiar with. So we decided to use that one for now, and then these will be uploaded to the NCATS cloud. At that point, by that time, perhaps 2 weeks from now, the data use agreement will be ready, and there'll be a data access committee that will have been established. The central IRB is JHU, as I mentioned. And then the research questions will come from the research environment and hopefully help bring an end to the COVID-19 pandemic through research. So I think that is the last data slide. If we go to the next one, I think we just have, very important. So a number of hubs already have asked, well, gosh, is there any funding available to this? We're estimating that it will cost around $50,000 to $100,000 to have your data folks do the work that's required to get the data, pull the data that's required, and do the data transfer. We're really hoping that hubs who are able to contribute data immediately using their hub funds will be able to do that without additional funds. We do have some limited funds that are available to support the personnel and resources needed for data transfer. We're really counting on everybody to have the honor system here, that we run this like a scholarship. So those who really need it, the funds are available, but if you don't need it, please don't take it and leave it for the hubs who really do, because there are some who really, for whom this really is necessary in order to have them be able to participate. So for those who do need it, the solicitation is this emergency no-see. It has to be the emergency no-see, this 026. There are many no-sees, but this is the one you need to go to, and you can see the details there. Awards anticipated to be $50,000 to $100,000. These are rolling submissions. However, as in any kind of first come, first serve kind of arrangement where there are limited resources, as we near the end of the fiscal year, we're going to have to defer some applications for FY21. And oh my gosh, we can't wait. None of us want to wait until October to begin affecting this pandemic in a big way. So we hope all of you will have begun participating before then. Okay, so next one. I think this really is the last. Oh my gosh, more slide. Okay, so this, just to put this in perspective, this is the beginning of the end, we hope, of COVID-19, but it really is the beginning of the beginning for this model. I mean, we're trying this out in a big way on COVID, but like everything in NCATS, I'm fond, as you all know, of this 3Ds paradigm: develop, demonstrate, and disseminate. We have developed this over the last many years and accelerated it and completed it in the context of COVID, and will be demonstrating its utility in the context of COVID. But this platform we hope will be usable for all kinds of different diseases, pandemics to come, and other public health needs that we all work on every day. Most of us who are not infectious disease folks, which are equally important. So you saw this daisy chain of what's going to happen and that will come. We're way over on the left there, and we hope you'll participate in that soon. We are working feverishly on FAQs, on a user's manual that will be coming shortly. Those are two different documents. And we will be having regular communications. I hope not always at 5 o'clock on Fridays, but regular communications with the community via update calls. This is the kind of thing that really requires personal communication and questions and the kind of regular update that only these calls will allow. The steering committee, I just want to thank for all of their input in preparing for today, and particularly my partner, Barry Kohler, who has been an unimaginable help for those who don't know him in getting us to where we are. So with that, let's go to the questions. And I know we only have a little bit of question time. I'm sorry for that. We can stay on longer if you are available too. If you have questions afterwards, on the data transfer agreement, again, it's to the NCATS partnership email. That's our Office of Strategic Alliances. That's Lily Portilla and her shop. The technical questions would go either to Ken Gersing, who I think most of you know, Director of Clinical Informatics, and our Chief Information Officer at NCATS, our CIO, Sam Michael. Applying to the NOC, if you have questions about that, of course, talk to your Hub's Program Officer, and again, more to come. So that's it, and all of my staff is on the call to answer questions either by the chat or by in person. So I'm going to ask Click at this point to be the master of ceremonies for taking questions. So glad to take them. So who wants to start?
It looks like Joni has was going to answer J. Michael Dean's question.
Okay.
Hi, thanks. This is Joni. I could not figure out how to answer it in the chat box, so apologies for that. Thanks for the question. Yeah, the intention is for the data to be transferred after
Joni, before, yes. Could each of my folks introduce themselves in case everybody doesn't know you?
Sure. This is Joni Rutter, Deputy Director of NCATS. Did you want others to introduce themselves as well?
No. Just before you answer the question.
Okay. J. Michael Dean asked, is the intention that data be transferred after DTA execution, but prior to data use agreement? Otherwise, the timeline makes no sense. And the answer to the question is yes, absolutely. We want to have the data transferred after the DTA execution and prior to the data use agreement. Once you take a look at the DTA, you will see that it explains basically an outline of the data use parameters. Since we have not generated the data use agreement, we're working on getting that in place. The idea is that the data transfer agreement and the data use agreement can take a little bit longer if they're together, but also the data use agreement we expect to be available to a lot more researchers around the nation and even around the world who would be able to access these data if they're qualified researchers. And so that we didn't want to necessarily tie the two together.
Okay, it seems like Tim Herta has a question. Who's going to answer that one?
Tim's question, this is Joni again. I won't be able to answer this, so I'm going to call on probably Melissa. Melissa, what is the method for data transfer and at what frequency? SFTP, daily, question mark, question mark.
So I can answer the first part of that question, but then I think it's a Ken or Sam Michael question. So we are working on this. I'll actually just answer one of the other questions that came up from Neil also at the same time. So we anticipate that each site is kind of got a slightly different situation. They have different clinical data models implemented and are refreshing those models at different rates. And so we are hoping to get data as frequently as a site is able. We anticipate that many sites will be able to do that twice a week, but that may not be possible for many sites, and we will take data at any frequency that can be realized. Second, in answer to Neil's earlier question, as far as the specific data model for those sites that are on multiple models, there may be some advantages for your site in choosing one model over another. And we will work with you to figure out what the best strategy is and how the scripts will work best with your site. For the question about the FTP, that's a Sam or Ken question.
Yeah, and part of that is it's going to depend on the site. So SFTP is definitely one option, but depending upon the site, we need to talk with them about what their capabilities are and what makes the most sense. And then Melissa answered the question regarding the frequency, but I would say that's definitely an option, but we're open and it's site specific.
Okay, what about the question? Who can answer Mark's question about the multiple hospital hubs? And then somebody think about Bob Taylor's question about the AHA data registry. I'm not familiar with that, but hopefully somebody is. So how about Mark's question first about the multiple hospital hubs?
Hi, Chris, it's Lily Portilla. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, Lily Portilla from the Office of Strategic Alliances at NCATS, and my office will be facilitating the data transfer agreements. And I believe the answer to this question is if each one of these hubs is a separate legal entity, each one should be signing a separate data transfer agreement and data use agreement.
All right, what about Bob's question about the AHA registry? Is anybody familiar with that? One of you cardiologists here? If not, Bob, we're gonna have to get back to you about, about that. But is anybody familiar with the AHA registry? No, doesn't sound like it. Okay, Bob, we'll get back to you about that and get back to everybody about it. Okay, other questions? All right, Neil's got a question. Whoever wants to answer it. That would be either Ken or Lily.
Lily again, data purge. I think I might need a little bit more info on that. There are clauses in the agreement that allow for termination of the use of the data, but there are certain provisions that some of that data may have to stay available for people that would be using it, but there are provisions that allow for the data to if you want to terminate the relationship under the DTA. But perhaps if you want to send me a separate email, I can dig more into your question.
All right, thanks, Lily. We keep forgetting to repeat the questions. Yeah, if people can repeat the questions when they're doing. For those of us who are not familiar, if we're in the Q&A box. If you look at that, it's at the bottom of your screen. Chat's on the right and Q&A's on the left. So if you click that one, you'll see all the questions that we're answering. So I think Mark Bejits has a question. Mark, do you want to ask it verbally? Has his hand raised.
Yeah, no, that was from earlier and the question's been answered. Apologies.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it was a question about the slides being sent out. Yeah, good. Okay. All right, so you see Brett answers the question about AHA has this Get With The Guidelines database for heart and stroke admissions and listed sites for use on data collection. If there's nobody here, Ken or others who don't know about it, we'll have to look into that and get back to you.
I don't know. This is Ken. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry, but we'll get back to you on that one.
Okay.
There is another question on the timeline for the data. No, we don't want their whole lives, their whole EHR. I think right now
Ken, can you repeat the question? Because people wouldn't.
I'm sorry.
It's Tim's question, right? Yeah.
Yeah. What is the timeline for data for people that are identified as having COVID? And it's asking you, do we want the lifetime? No, we do not want the lifetime. It's 2 years of their data and going forward. And just to be clear, we're asking for people who have COVID, but also people who have been tested for COVID or SARS or other respiratory syndromes that could be like that. So we can follow those other folks as actually a control over time.
Okay, what about the question about PCORnet? The next question. I'll just read the question. As a follow-up to Neil's question, if we already sent our OMOP COVID data to our PCORnet, should our PCORnet coordinating center contribute data on our behalf? So who can answer that one?
I think this is Ken again. I don't, and Lily, I'm going to defer a little bit to you on this. I do not think they can do that because they're not a legal entity that would allow them to do that. But we've worked with Trinetics on this issue, and Trinetics is going to actually, you give Trinetics the permission, but the institution will actually have to be the ones that releases the data.
Or Ken, you know, that we would have to have demonstration that they have the ability to share other institutions' data. It's one or the other.
I think there's also, this is Melissa, it's also an issue in the sense that, if you're already sending data through PCORnet, you're well positioned to send data to the N3C, presuming that you have the DTA in place for your institution. The data that's going through to the N3C is a larger data set. It includes possible cases, flu cases, and negative controls than what PCORI is doing. Also, PCORI is not actually aggregating the EHR tables. So the data that's going to come to N3C in the secure enclave will be much more expressive for those machine learning applications that Chris was mentioning earlier than the distributed network approaches, which are complementary and synergistic. So we're basically partnered with the folks working on PCORnet and the other distributed networks in order to realize these goals, but it's not the same data.
Yeah. It's a good question from Rachel. I'll just read it for us. Limiting to 2 years of data may exclude important comorbidities depending on how they are documented. Is there a reason for that? Meaning, is there a reason to limit to 2 years? Chris Shute would like to answer this question live. Go for it, Chris.
I'm sorry, Chris Shute, Chief Research Information Officer at Hopkins and co-lead of the N3C. When we wrote the IRB, Rachel, this was a question about minimum necessary. And the balance was, well, do you need somebody's life record or is it probable that you'll get most of the comorbidities of interest, at least on a problem list that carries forward, as you know, in some cases within a 2-year period. And so the minimum necessary rule was how that rather arbitrary solution was made.
All right, other questions? I'm not seeing other questions on the Q&A. There's some really good data in the chat, and we are going to capture this chat and try to figure out how to distribute at least some of the information in the chat, because there's a lot of information there along with the slides. What other? Here's a good question from Heather Sue. How are you defining those who have COVID? Important question. RT-PCR positive from any specimen, a serology, etc. So who wants to take that one?
This is Ken. And if Emily Path is on the phone, she should take this, but I don't see her. There is an ongoing active phenotype group, and they are meeting and they are working on that phenotype, and it's defined by many things. And Melissa put the link to the GitHub phenotype in the chat, and so you can go there and see how we define it. But it's defined by multiple things. I do think this will evolve over time because we're going to go from obviously acute diseases to chronic sequelae. That has been defined, and Emily has done a wonderful job of working with all the data models to come up with a harmonized phenotype. You know, LOINC codes, and obviously before LOINC codes were mature enough, we're going kind of what was used before there. So there's a lot of different ways we're trying to identify it, obviously from diagnosis and from LOINC and other ways.
So
Hi, this is Emily Path. I just joined as a panelist. I'm sorry I wasn't able to answer before. What Ken said is absolutely right, and I just want to put a quick plug in to folks to take a look at the GitHub link that is in the chat, because we want this phenotype to be very much community informed. We're doing the best that we can to weekly look up new codes that are being released, because they're being released all the time. But we rely on our community members to keep us informed as well. So please head to that link, and always happy to hear from folks that have feedback.
That was Emily Pfaff from UNC, in case you wondered. Thank you, Emily. And a reminder that we are going to get a website up where additional information was posted. We haven't done that yet. My staff pleaded with me to not have this call until the website was up and the user manual was done and all the T's were crossed, and I said, no way. So I really wanted to get this information to you and get the DTAs going. So, but that we should have up in the next few days. And you know how the NCATS people are going to be spending their weekend. Okay, Bob's asking, can you send the link by email? Zoom does not allow. So are you talking about Bob, are you talking about the link that Emily mentioned? Yes. So Emily, can you, well, actually, I will ask the NCATS people to get the link. Well, Emily, can you just communicate with us, and we'll get the link and then send it to everybody?
No problem.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I hope you saw Melissa's note in the chat. We'll send a set of relevant information later as a care package, so you will be getting that. All right, I think we are reaching the end of this. I really, really appreciate all of you signing in so late on a Friday. I know you probably had other plans, but I hope you'll agree with me that this is a really important step for our program, for all of us as researchers and physicians, and I dearly hope all of us for the country at helping bring an end to this awful pandemic that we're in. So, any last questions or comments from anyone before we sign off for today? Okay, and I hope you'll see. I hope you'll see Melissa's chat there that will send the information. Please do feel free to reach out to us and or to CE2H if you have questions. And N3C meetings, you may not know, they're regular meetings and they're open to everybody. And so please take a please take a look at that. And we're on the website. Were these going to be on the CLICS website, where they always are on the PI meetings? And thank you to Eric for that, for your best wishes, and thank you for all of your contributions. Okay, so the slides and the recording, this whole thing has been recorded too. I should have mentioned that. Will be posted on the CTSA program webinar section of the CLIC website. So with that, I'm going to call this meeting to a close. Thank you all, and we will be in touch, and please be in touch with us. Have a good evening.